Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm Tom Worth Jr. I want to talk about today the kind of larger meaning of the election, but also of what happened leading up to it, what's happened since then, and how we look at ourselves and what we should be doing, what we could be doing, why we could be doing it, just for our. It's important, and I looked back on some history for this one, including the book I've been listening to with David McCullough, reading some speeches of his through the years. But he brings up letters. He brings up John Quincy Adams. He brings up John Adams, Abigail Adams. That kind of founding father era, but also. It goes past that, and there's just a lot of striking parallels through what's happened here and what is happening and what will continue to happen here compared to what happened before. A big part of this was from an address about teaching, and he points out that people in history, when we study history, they don't know how it's going to turn out any more than we do. They're confronted with things that they've never been confronted with before, and just like we are now today. And it's funny because a lot of these letters and speeches he's delivered were, like in the 90s or the early 2000s. I think that's when he was delivering a lot of these. So these are long before, they're almost 30 years ago. In some cases, or over 30 years ago in some cases, still applicable today, 30 years later. But of course they are, because he's basing them on things that happened hundreds of years ago. And a few things got me thinking about this. He talks about what we've been given, the laws, the institutions, the people who gave them to us, the people who fought and died for them, but also the people who studied history, who studied the classics, who studied wisdom, and came up with these systems and came up with these institutions. And we all just take them for granted to some extent, whether you know about it or not, or whether you know you're taking it for granted or not, you do. But then you can that's a continuum, I believe, and you have an extreme like Donald Trump and his supporters, who not only are taking it all for granted, but they're just completely discarding it with no regard from how it evolved to what it is, all of the work and all of the effort and all of the loss and suffering that went into creating it in the first place. That they're just scrapping it. That's the plan. And that got me to thinking, why are they doing this? They're doing this for Donald Trump. They're doing this because he's telling them that they should do this, that there's no other reason for them to do this. And a large part of why he wants to do this is it's for the power, and it's to keep himself out of prison. And then that got me thinking about his Supreme Court and his federal appointees, and the immunity he now enjoys for literally anything he does. And that took me back to the Prince, Machiavelli, the Florentine writer from the 1500s. And that's where the end justifies the means came into our lexicon, where he said you could do that. You could, whatever you didn't matter as long as it was for and the key part is, if the end was a good moral end, then the means to justify or to arrive at that end could be justified. Now he's talking about princes of the time. Basically, these were ultimate authoritarian figures. In whatever they had to do to claw their way to power, if it was for a good moral end, if they intended to do good once they got there, then maybe it was acceptable to do anything to get there. But that's not Donald Trump. his is not a good moral end, and even a good moral end is obviously debatable. But what the Supreme Court has allowed him to do is to say, and that's why all these cases where he has been guilty or he would be guilty as soon as it goes to trial, they're just thrown out because they have literally enshrined, they have codified the end justifies the means concept for United States presidents, that anything they do to attain the office of the presidency, even committing crimes, is okay because it was done to reach the presidency and to be president once there. That's not at all what the founders intended. Something very important to all of the founding fathers, even George Washington had the play, he had his men do the play. It was a play called Cato by a guy named Joseph Addison. It was written around the time. It was about the Roman statesman Cato, but it was written in the 1700s. And everybody knew this play. It was kind of, the hero, and the overriding theme of that was the honor of Cato. And you see that in letters. You see that in letters with John Adams. You see that in letters with George Washington. They quote certain lines from that play, and they're all quoting the same lines. And I noted one of them from McCullough. He says, we can't guarantee success in this war, but we can do something better. We can deserve it. And that's the very opposite of betraying and clawing and cheating. When you get to the top by those means, it's completely meaningless. And these people in the late 1700s realized that. And Donald Trump does not realize that. And this Supreme Court does not realize this. The important thing, the honorable thing, is to deserve something. That's more important than actually attaining the thing. And these people hundreds of years ago had this realization and built our country on it. And here we are almost 250 years later, just completely throwing that away. And you have to ask yourself why. John Adams and Abigail Adams, they just have a treasure trove of letters to each other. They're highly intelligent people, and they're very honest with each other, and it's kind of uncomfortable sometimes when she's criticizing him. But she also wrote to her own son, John Quincy Adams, another future president. And John Quincy were the ones who were not slave owners for the first, 30, 40 years of America. The presidents who weren't slave owners, they were also one-term presidents. But their 11-year-old son is going to accompany John Adams. This is during the war, so if they get caught by a British ship and they're leaving in the wintertime to cross the Atlantic, which is fraught with danger of storms and shipwreck, but the British Navy ruled the seas. And if they caught that ship, they would bring John Adams to London and hang him as a traitor. And they send their 11-year-old son, John Quincy, along with him because it's too great of an opportunity to not have him risk his life and go. The people he would meet, the learning he would make, learning a new language, learning new concepts, just the exposure this 11-year-old kid would have with his dad was too great an opportunity to miss. And she's writing a letter to her 11-year-old son explaining this to him. And here's this is a direct, I had to write this down and I put it on a screen. It says, remember, this is her 11-year-old son. And this is what I want us to keep in mind right now as we go through this terrible, difficult time. This line, when I heard this, it made me think of doing a video that would incorporate this line. Because if you want to give up, or if you want to be depressed all the time, or despondent, or in despair, or have no hope, that's not what anyone should be doing. I don't know what we can be doing other than staying engaged, learning things, writing things, reading things, and seeing if something comes up, staying engaged. But the line she wrote to her 11-year-old son, who was scared to go on this trip, she says, "These are the times in which a genius would wish to live. It's not in the still calm of life with the repose of a Pacific station that characters are born. The habits of a vigorous mind are formed in contending with difficulties." So that's the cool line. The habits of a vigorous mind are formed in contending with difficulties. And that's what we're doing now. She goes on, "Great necessities call out great virtues. When a mind is raised and animated by scenes that engage the heart," we can all be as smart as we want, but if our heart is not moved, we're probably not going to do anything about it, right? She says, "When a mind is raised and animated by scenes that engage the heart, then those qualities which would otherwise lay dormant waken to life and form the character of the hero and the statesman." So if we could have our Republican brethren in Congress just remind themselves of what it is to be America and how America was formed, and what America went through before they decide to either confirm his appointees, which I don't think they're going to do. I think they're going to do the recess thing where Senate is just canceled for a while, goes into recess, so all of his terrible appointees can just become their positions without the senators having to go through and ask the hard questions about, okay, which criminal acts did you do? Which underage girl did you have sex with in front of other people? Which drugs did you do? What sexual assault? And I'm not all talking about Matt Gaetz. I'm also talking about the Secretary of Defense. So they would just not have to go through any of that. They can just declare that the Senate is in recess, and then all of these appointees just become the cabinet members. It's probably what will happen. But if they still do have time to advise and consent and tell Trump, we're not okay with this. I don't know if that would matter or not. But if they could be reminded of these lines, then perhaps he might be swayed and pick someone different. The other thing was with John Quincy Adams, that 11-year-old boy, he later went back to Europe, was a diplomat, and just by David McCullough's account, who is as smart on presidents as anyone, John Quincy Adams, he said, was the best educated and possibly the most brilliant and best human being to ever occupy the White House. He was a one-term president. He narrowly defeated Andrew Jackson in 1824, who was a war hero. He was also a despicable human being, Andrew Jackson was. And it was a tie in the Electoral College, and Henry Clay at the House of Representatives was a supporter of John Quincy Adams, and so he threw the election to Adams, and it had to go to one or the other. He was an Adams supporter, so that's who he went with. 4 years later, Andrew Jackson defeats John Quincy Adams. How did this happen? See if this sounds familiar. All of the Jackson supporters claimed that the election had been stolen from them. Now, in their case, they actually had a more legitimate claim because Jackson did actually win the popular vote. But again, it was all to the Electoral College. But at that time, in 1824, it was because the Electoral College, one of the reasons they came up with that is those were the people that were the best educated, that were less easily swayed, like the common man was. But still, they felt like the election was stolen. So that was a big thing in the rematch. And another big thing was from 1824 to 1828, they expanded voting rights so more white males held voting rights now, and these are the people. So there are just more of them. More common man people were awarded the vote, and those people supported Jackson. Jackson was in favor of Western expansion and Indian removal, and this was wildly popular with that type of common man. The Indian removal. I don't know. It's just, this was 1824 and 1828 elections. So this is 200 years ago. We have the same issues. We have the same dynamics at play here. And I just find it all fascinating. But I want us to look at these times as a time where our hearts are moved, as the time to stir us to engagement, as a time to motivate us to learn more and figure out. Look, I still don't have the answer as to what to do about any of this. I'm still searching, and everybody is searching, and we have really smart people in government who are searching, and in academia who are searching. So, and I'm not saying searching for overturning the election. I'm saying searching for how to deal with the situation that we now find ourselves in, a new situation with which we have never been confronted, just like all of those who came before us. We don't know how this is going to turn out, just like all of those who came before us. We've seen far darker days than this, although this seems pretty dark. We will figure something out. I don't know what it is or when, but I want us to all keep searching, all keep trying. Don't go into a deep, dark hole. Support each other, reach out to each other. Just keep looking and keep searching, and hopefully that can keep us all going for the next couple months and the next 4 years, and we'll see what we have. But that is my hope. Also hope that you all have a good weekend, and we will talk to you later.